The Lord be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Matthew. After Jesus had been born at Bethlehem in Judea during the reign of King Herod, some wise men came to Jerusalem from the east. "Where is the infant King of the Jews?" they asked. "We saw his star as it rose and have come to do him homage." When King Herod heard this, he was perturbed, and so was the whole of Jerusalem. He called together all the chief priests and the scribes of the people and inquired of them where the Christ was to be born. "At Bethlehem in Judea," they told him, "for this is what the prophet wrote. And you, Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, you are by no means least among the leaders of Judah, for out of you will come a leader who will shepherd my people Israel." Then Herod summoned the wise men to see him privately. He asked them the exact date on which the star had appeared and sent them on to Bethlehem. "Go and find out all about the child," he said, "and when you have found him, let me know, so that I too may go and do him homage." Having listened to what the king had to say, they set out. And there, in front of them, was the star they had seen rising. It went forward and halted over the place where the child was. The sight of the star filled them with delight, and going into the house, they saw the child with his mother Mary, and falling to their knees, they did him homage. Then, opening their treasures, they offered him gifts of gold and frankincense and myrrh. But they were warned in a dream not to go back to Herod, and returned to their own country by a different way. The Gospel of the Lord. Internationally, we Scots have a reputation of being canny with money. And it reminds me of a story of an elderly man who lived in Edinburgh, and him and his wife had two grown-up children, and their children lived in London. And a few days before Christmas, he phoned his son, and he said, "Son, I've got some bad news for you." And the son said, "What's that, Dad?" He says, "I'm divorcing your mother." He says, "I've been with her for 40 years. And I've tried to change her, and I can't. So I give up. I'm divorcing her. I've had enough." So the son said, Dad, please stop. Don't. Let's think about this. You know, you can't throw away 40 years as easily as that. Let's talk about this." He says, I'm going to come up, and we can sit down and have a chat and work this through. I'm sure we can work something out. And the father said, "I've had enough. I'm not listening anymore. So phone your sister and tell her." So the brother phoned his sister, and he says, "You'll never believe this. I've just had a phone call from my dad saying that he's going to divorce my mum after 40 years of marriage." And the sister said, "Oh, this is terrible. We've got to stop him." So she phoned her dad, and she says, "Dad, what is this I hear that you're going to divorce my mum?" And he said, "Yep, I've had enough of her. I can't change her. She's out." And she said, No, we need to stop and think about this. You know, let's talk together about all this and see if we can work something out. We must be able to work something out. She says, "I'll tell you what, I'm going to come up. Don't do anything. I'm going to come up and we can talk this through." So the father hung up the phone, turned to his wife with a smile, held her hand and said, "They're coming for Christmas and we didn't have to pay a thing." You know, for some people, good news can be bad news. You know, for King Herod, the good news that a child is born is bad news. He is called the infant King of the Jews, and Herod, who is the king, is threatened by that. He sees his power being eroded. and it's not good news for him. For the wise men, it's good news. For us, it's good news. You know, for all eternity, it's good news. Pope Francis, in his homily for Epiphany, he said this: "From the experience of the Magi, we learn that the first place he loves to be sought is in restless questioning. The exciting adventure of the wise men from the East teaches us that faith is not born of our own merits, thoughts, and theories, but rather it's God's gift." You know what Pope Francis is reminding us there is that faith comes from questioning. Questioning is good. And that gift that Pope Francis is talking about is the gift of grace. And grace allows us to step out our comfort zones and ask questions about God, to try and grow in love of him. It invites us to see the big questions in our lives. You know, so often those big questions of our life of where do we find love? Where do we seek true happiness? Where do we get life's fulfillment? Very often those questions we try to shut away. We don't want to ask them because, well, it might upset our lives. We would rather not face those big challenges. But if we want to grow as human beings, if we want to grow in our relationship with one another and with God, then we have to confront the big questions in life. You know, we have to have a reflective life. Otherwise, life is not worth living. It just becomes mundane. The wise men teach us something today. You know, they sought a question: where is the infant king of the Jews? They were looking for Jesus. They were looking for something in their lives. They didn't quite know what that was, but they knew they were looking for something. And here's the amazing thing. They were astronomers, scripture scholars tell us, but they didn't stand looking at the sky looking for answers. They embarked on a journey. They set out from their homelands on places where they did not know. There were no roads. It was a dangerous journey. They didn't have GPS to guide them. They really journeyed in faith and in searching. They were looking for Jesus. They were looking for something. And they come to Herod. And they inquire, does Herod know where the infant king of the Jews is? And Herod consults the scribes and the Pharisees. And these people look to the scriptures to see if the scriptures can reveal anything for them to help them on their search. And it's a model for us. If we want to grow in faith, we have to embark on a journey. We have to step out our comfort zones. We have to be prepared to challenge all our beliefs, to challenge us the things that we've just accepted in life now, to challenge them in the light of this newborn King. How are we living our lives in the light of that He is here? You know, the question that the wise men ask is, where is the newborn King? That's a question that we should be asking for ourselves. Where today can we find this newborn King in our lives? We have to take risks. We have to be open to questioning. You know, the thing about faith is it's a pilgrimage. You know, so often people talk about, I have faith, as if it's something you can put in a box. Faith is a journey. You don't have faith, you undertake faith. Faith is a pilgrimage. It's a way of growing. It's a way of developing ourselves. And so we have to be open to the grace of God in our life. We have to seek Him. We seek Him in the Scriptures. We seek Him by dialogue with Him in prayer. We seek Him by sharing with one another our faith, by looking at those questions, those big questions in our lives, by not being afraid to ask the questions, by not being afraid to be open to the grace of God in our life, who might change us, who might challenge us, who might take us out of our comfort zone. But if we do so in a spirit of faith, then we will grow and we will recognize the newborn King in our lives today. And so I think today invites us to ask some fundamental questions. Am I journeying towards the Lord of life to make Him the Lord of my life? Jesus, who are you for me? Where are you calling me to go? And what are you asking of my life? What decisions are you inviting me to make for the sake of others? I think these are some fundamental questions that this feast day of the Epiphany asks of us. And brothers and sisters, if we meet the challenge, if we're prepared to ask the question, then the reality is we will come into the newborn King of the Jews, and like the wise men, we will fall to our knees and worship.